And we are live for sure. So let's start off with a few things, and then we're going to have some really, really great guests. I told you, the pizza man, the man who knows more about the border than anybody else, and then a couple of surprises. But let's begin with, I'm very, very confused. I investigated a lot of cases, and I usually had a good instinct for who did it. But I can't figure out where that cocaine came from in the White House. I don't even have a suspect. Now they tell me that there's a person that lives in the White House that's one of the biggest crack users in the history of the country. Now I do happen to have about 500 pictures of him, always with no clothes on, with a crack pipe, like he's sitting in a closet all filled with crack, or he's walking around his house, smoke all over the place, or he's driving an automobile at 100 miles an hour trying to kill people, smoking crack. And by the way, in the house are two minor children when he's walking around with no clothes on and smoking crack. And the psychiatrist of one of the kids said they should throw him out of the house. And they told his father, the grandfather of the children, but this guy's not much of a grandfather because he let the bum stay there and endanger those children. Yeah, real bum this guy is. Kind of guy that if you knew him like personally, you wouldn't want to even look at him. This is the kind of guy that won't even recognize his granddaughter. He pretends he doesn't have the granddaughter. Imagine the damage he does to that kid. And they say Donald Trump's a bad guy. You think Donald Trump would ever do that to any of his children? Think he's a better father than Joe Biden? Let's forget president. Think he's a better human being? What kind of human being says I have 6 grandchildren when I have 7? You know what kind of human being does that? An evil one. And one who's so worried about his own whatever, he doesn't want to admit that there's an illegitimate. If I could show you the crimes that are on that hard drive committed by Joe Biden, illegitimate is like great. I mean, it's the least that he should worry about. How about taking bribes from China? That might be a little worse, huh? Or selling out the United States of America to China. That could be a little worse. So I don't know. They say this guy is one of the biggest crack users in the country. And then cocaine shows up in the White House. But nobody's investigating him. They're investigating everybody else. And so far, if you watched it carefully, they've come up with 3 different locations that they found the cocaine. First, they said they found it in a library. I know where that library is. It's on the first floor. It's generally kind of pretty much a personal library. I don't think they wanted it in the library because only a few people have access to the library. Then they put it in the waiting room of the West Wing. They found it in the waiting room of the West Wing so that the second biggest liar in America, Biden's press secretary, could come out and say, oh, that's a very heavily trafficked office. Like it's Grand Central Station in the waiting room of the White House. Thousands of people come through every day. Everybody that comes in, you get their social security number, their license. Gosh, when I was there, you even had to take a test, a COVID test. And I can't tell you what they would look up. They'd look up everything. Really. Everybody's documented who goes into that office. Now it turns out it wasn't in the library. It wasn't in the office, waiting room. It was downstairs, right outside of the Situation Room. That's the place where the president goes if he's considering nuclear war. Well, we got a little outside of there. Maybe one of the guys going in there or women to advise him needs a little help with cocaine. What the hell are we doing? What's wrong with our country? I knew when we elected this guy because I'm the one who got the hard drive and put it out. I knew we were electing a major criminal, which to me is like unbelievable. I spent my life putting criminals in jail. But I've never seen a guy take the numbers of bribes and the dollar amounts. I mean, it's going to turn out when they finish the whole thing. And I kind of have a preview of the end of it because I have the copy of the kid's computer in my safe. And we'll be pushing $100 million. We're probably now we're at about 40 million that you can make out from the newspaper. But we're going to get to about 100. But let's say we stay at 40 million. We've never had anything like that as a scandal in America. I don't know, maybe some president took 40 million, but we don't know about it if he did. This will be the biggest scandal in the history of the United States. It is the biggest scandal. And maybe worse than the money he took is how he's corrupted our government. And the rest of the world is looking at us, and they're not saying, just Biden's corrupt. They're saying our wonderful, beautiful country, the United States of America, is corrupt. And they're right. It is corrupt because he's corrupted it. And, a whole bunch of us let him do it by voting for him. I mean, I hope we've learned our lesson. So you know what the odds are at Las Vegas, because Las Vegas is smarter than me. Here are the odds. The number one betting choice of Las Vegas at 2-1 is Hunter Biden. The next one is Travis Kelce at 8-1. Then a Jonas brother at 10-1. Angelina Jolie at 12-1. Snoop Dogg. Elton John. Who else do they have here? Paris Hilton, Tom Brady, Jill Biden, and 150-1 Joe Biden. The only problem with Joe Biden, he wouldn't remember. You'd ask him, Joe, where'd you leave that cocaine? Where's my ice cream? I want my ice cream. Jill, do I have to keep doing this job? If you want the damn money, you do, you bum. Right? So Hunter and Joe make it clear to the whole world that we have two different systems of justice in this country. One for them, Hillary, high-level Democrats, not all Democrats, but the high-level ones, high-level Washington types, and they can. And then there's the deplorables, the whatever we are, they're playthings, and then if you're associated with Trump, you get prosecuted for anything they can imagine, usually for the things they did. So they charge, if you look at what they've charged Trump with, everything they've charged Trump with, he's been not guilty, and they've done it. For example, Russian collusion, which is the first one I defended him on. He is 100% innocent. Not only is he innocent, Hillary Clinton paid to make the false charge against him. She paid $1.2 million to develop the false evidence of Russian collusion. However, at the time she did it, she was colluding with Ukraine. She was committing the crime that she said he was committing. Or they charged him with pressuring the president of Ukraine to investigate these poor innocent people, Hunter and Joe Biden. At the time, the FBI was hiding the hard drive. So was Bill Barr. Nobody asked that guy that. How can you, as Attorney General, impeached for something you prove he's innocent of. And you hide the evidence, you bum? Not only that, this guy for 25 years, I was accused by Joe Biden of being a Russian agent. When he accused me of being a Russian agent, I looked at the papers and the hard drive. No, none of them were in Russian. It looked to me like it came from Dover, Delaware. I didn't think there was a Dover in Moscow. And the guy I got it from was John Mac Isaacs, who looks like, if he looks like anything, he looks like he's from Scotland. It had nothing to do with Russia. That was a big lie. Biden actually said it during the debate, and none of these people corrected him. None of these people, they supported the lie. So I don't know, even before we get to fixing the election by vote changes, they fixed the election by fraud, by keeping from you an unbelievable history of crime by the person who wanted to be president. And I think, we end up getting what we deserve. We should never have let that happen. We let that happen to us. I don't know why we did. We got fooled, or enough people got fooled. And now our country is desperate. I mean, we're a country that we're not on the road to socialism. We're there. We're not on the road to fascism. When they can arrest the leading candidate of the opposition party, who was the former president of the United States, for moving papers around his office, we're in deep trouble. And you know why they're doing it. You got to be stupid not to know why they're doing it. Because they're afraid he can beat them. And he can. If we have a straight election, he won't beat them. He'll wipe them out. And that's what they're afraid of. And they're going to do more unless we stay on top of it. And that's why I need you. You're the patriots that can stay on top of it. So, I mean, the cocaine in the White House, I care more about all the money from China and how much he gave away for it. For example, when Trump left office, we had an air base 400 miles from the Chinese border. Do you know how valuable that is? To have an air base, a big air base, a just modernized air base, an air base from which you could launch anything you wanted and it'd get there before you could say boo. We gave it away for nothing, just to help China. Why would we ever remove an air base 400 miles from China? Unless we're compromised. And then we also left behind $85 billion in arms. Didn't anybody tell stupid Biden, if you watch a movie, when the bad guys are going to take your fort, you burn everything in it? I mean, kids know that. And you're telling me that the 31 million from China didn't affect that decision? Right. The Chinese were hiring Hunter for his expertise. Mr. Z is on the phone, Hunter. Well, we've got an election going on. You've got to stay involved in it. We got to make sure that we keep it honest and fair. I don't think there's going to be any problem if we have an honest election. I think our risk is, if we let them do what they did last time, cover things up, we'll play around with the vote. And we have enough people to watch them, we can stop them. And I think this time we will. Okay. So I say the highlight for me last week. In an era in which every time you watch the news, you say to yourself, I don't believe that. Is that really happening? They're showing us how men can give milk from their breasts. What the hell does a man want to give milk from his breast for? And you're going to produce this make-believe milk and you're not going to kill somebody? I mean, this is the stuff you got to listen to, right? This is crazy stuff. So I saw something on television. I just loved it. And then I realized it was one of my favorite people. And although this was funny as hell, this is a really serious guy who really helped us get through September 11 with not just with his great art, which is superior, but with his great spirit of America. He knows how to. And then he was tossing those pizzas over. I'm going to let him deliver his line because I don't want to take it from him. Scott Lebedo.
Yeah, just give it a tap.
All right. Before we tell them about your great documentary, which they know about, right? You know about his great documentary?
It's coming out soon. It's coming out. He's in it. That's why it's great.
No.
Wait, before anything, let me backtrack. Let me backtrack on the whole cocaine thing.
You got any pizza?
Quick, really quick. Cocaine's a very bad thing, but I figured out, you all know cocaine, it gives you energy. It wakes you up. That bag of cocaine in the White House, give it to Sleepy Joe. Problem solved. We'll be back on track. Am I wrong?
And he wouldn't even know.
He wouldn't know.
So tell me, before we get into all of the wonderful things you've done, which are very, very important, what made you think of doing that? How did you conceive of getting those pizzas and throwing them into my old house?
Into your old house, right?
No, I look at it. I know that. Yeah. I mean, I lived there for 8 years. I know that gate. All I kept thinking was, if I were there then and he was throwing them in, it'd be a contest between me and my dog who would get the pizza. I try to catch it and eat it.
It would never happen under your watch. You're not.
Give me pizza or give me death. What was it?
Listen, it was about. Listen, as funny as it was. Again, you know me. I've been doing this 30 years. Whether it's pouring fake blood at D.A. Bragg's office. Remember, I got arrested for that. Bringing attention. I
thought you'd get arrested for this.
No, but the cops. I don't want to put them on the spot. They're right there. You know what I mean? They're right there. These guys, I work with them. They work.
Any of them throw a few. Any of the cops throw a few?
Nah, they wanted to. But I didn't. They gave me a summons, whatever. And I'm going to take my lawyer to court, and I'm going to fight it. Now, listen, I'm an artist. I'm expressing myself. These were my tools. And I'm an environmentalist. I was feeding the pigeons and the rats. Hello. Right? Case dismissed.
You know, Dr. Maria and Ted and I just saved the pigeons. Saved the pigeon's life.
They're humanitarians.
A good guy.
Everybody thinks as conservative people, we don't like the environment. We love the environment because this is where the pizza thing goes. We love the environment. You know, I grew up in Staten Island, more parks in Staten Island than anywhere else in the city. We loved animals. We had animals, but we are realists. I said it in my speech the other night. They take it to the moon. And then nobody listens to their causes because they take it to the moon.
Yeah, they go crazy.
You know, there's a way. I like green energy. I'm for it, but you can't put windmills in the ocean killing the whales that you're trying to save. It makes no sense. And now it's
never
pizza.
thought of that.
Yes, they're killing the whales. Yeah, of course you did. Come on,
I got it.
Jerry got him.
One time I've been interviewed when they started. Remember, it used to be global warming, and then we changed it to climate change. So one of those idiots like Chris Todd or Chuck Dingleberry or whatever the hell his name is, he says to me, "Do you believe in climate change?" I said, "Of course." There's, let me see if I can get it right now, Chuck. There's a spring. Then it becomes summer.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Isn't there something in between that and winter? Oh, fall. And winter, see?
It's the.
Looks at me.
I've been saying it.
You can't make fun of this. This is so serious. I mean, we're gonna. I mean, according to them, our Earth is gone. Or Gore had us gone in 2010.
Yeah, and the little girl from Hansel and Gretel
Three
said we were going to be last week. We were supposed to be dead.
Yeah, she's had 3.
The world leader who went to they took him. You listen. That's the problem here in America. All due respect to children, we don't listen to children. They're not telling us how to run the world. When do we start listening to children? When?
Or demented presidents.
Presidents, mayors.
So now, okay, but what made you think of doing it? I really want to know, how did you come up with the idea, and exactly how many pizzas did you throw over? About 12?
Well, again, back to where we started before. I've done this so many times, using props to fight this, fight that.
Yeah, but that was ingenious.
And I knew it was either going to be okay, or I knew it would be the shot heard around the world.
It was.
Because
Pizza. Can you imagine pizza?
Pizza. Now, a lot of people said to me, especially my Italian friends, how could you waste a pizza? You're throwing pizza. Yeah, But in a serious note, in 1773, in Boston, they loved their tea. They loved their tea. They made a sacrifice. So that was a very painful sacrifice for me to do that.
Was it good pizza?
It was generic pizza.
Okay.
I got it around the corner. All my friends were like, where'd you get the pizza? I can't reveal that information.
Yeah.
On grounds of incrimination, because then I go back to Staten Island, and all my pizza friends over there would bury me in a backyard somewhere. So anyway, I just knew that something so simple and humorous. Yes, was it humorous? Yes, it was. But it was a symbolic gesture. You know, again, being an activist for so long, you learn how to create that visual stimulation. You know, I could paint the pizza
Have you
or
seen,
yell.
how many of you have seen him do one of his like 3-minute
Speed
your little
paintings.
3-minute paintings, which is unreal, right? Unreal. So now tell us what happened, because I can't believe this. So what has happened since then?
Okay, this is breaking news.
Ta-da!
Now, if anybody remembers, the story was everywhere across the world. And he came out maybe a half an hour after I threw the pizza, because that can of worms.
He is Adams.
Yes, Adams.
Was he
yes,
inside at the time?
Yes.
Talking to God?
God, or
Remember
yelling
he
at
talked to
some
God.
Holocaust survivor about him being on a
Yeah,
plantation.
about the plantation. You're not going to put me back on a plantation.
All right, we're talking too much about him,
Yeah, okay.
but I have to. So he publicly said, after his statement about, the world, we're killing the world with pizza, whatever. And he said, the guy who threw pizza over my gate, I want him to come to City Hall and sit with me and hear he wants to hear my side of the story, our side. So at first I was like, and then Joe Borelli, Councilman Borelli, said, Scott, remember what you do. I'm reminding you that you're an activist. An activist, you're supposed to get results and make change. So I said, okay, if he calls me, thank you. If he is serious about this invitation, I will go. And he wants me to bring a vegan pizza. Now, an Italian guy from Staten Island, I have to wear gloves. There's no such thing as vegan pizza. But I'm a gentleman.
Is he going to use
a knife and fork? Yeah. I don't listen.
Like the big dodo?
I'm going to be a gentleman, and I'm not going to curse. I'm going to be eloquent in my reasoning. But if he asks me to bring a pineapple pizza, I'll be throwing pineapples over City Hall. There's no such thing as that. So anyway, I was like, I told my council member, I said, let him know that this meeting has to happen soon. Because what they do, and as you know, is all right, it's over now. Pass the bill, everybody forgot about it. So he spoke to him, and 2 days ago, Eric Adams texted me himself and said, I'm ready to sit down with you. So as much as I can't stand this man and his policies, he manned up.
No,
And
good.
he
Do
brought
it.
it.
Let's
So
find out. I mean, it's always worth trying
I'm
to
gonna
find
go.
out.
But I'm going to tell him straight off the bat, if he does not, this is ridiculous. Listen, the sun, that big ball in the sky, you all heard me say it. She gets pissed off, whether it was 1,000,000 years ago or yesterday. She controls the thermostat here. She controls the climate change. Not pizza. Yeah. Not pizza. So
That was very insightful.
there's a lot of people
Very
who want
insightful.
who want to get on board this pizza party. And I told everybody to stand down, because if he pushes this bill, if he does not agree with me and our terms, we will block out the sun launching pizza over the fence of City Hall with 1,000 people. Trust me. That's how I roll. Everybody's like, you better be worried about him. He's a sneaky guy. He'll take you out. And he doesn't know me. He does not know me. Anyway, go ahead. You can talk.
My money's on you, Scott. The money's on Scott, and I really do think sometimes something humorous and something symbolic can really, I mean, it makes up for like 30 speeches or papers, or it just made the point right away how foolish this all is, and
It's
how
just so
crazy
foolish.
it is. And ultimately the economic damage it'll do to the city if they change all these stoves. And
It's what, I know he's going to come back at, about me with, well, no, we're not getting rid of the piece ovens. We're just going to put these new systems in there. Yeah, another $20,000 system to a mom and pop shop. Here, anybody ever drive past Burger King? There's millions of them. Burger King. They pump out, it's delicious. You ever see that gray smoke that they pump out?
Right.
They pump it out to get your attention to come in. You know what that's doing to the ozone? And a couple of slices of pizza, no, it's the constant bombarding of these small mom and pop businesses that they are pushing out of this once great city.
tell them the trip you took around the country. This could be in the documentary, so give them a little.
Yeah, some of you have
Let
seen
me
the
give you the
trailer.
kind of energy this guy has and the patriotism he has deep inside him. I mean, really, he's funny, but he's a serious guy.
Yeah, I did
He's a really serious artist and a serious man.
350 state tours in my truck, beat up old truck. The first was in 2006. And I just packed it up with paint and a couple of dollars, and I drove through every state, and I found a building, and I painted a big flag on it, on veterans posts and on houses and police stations. And I did it 3 times because, when people ask me, well, how do you know? Why do you need to do that? Who are you to talk to people? How do you know better than the talking heads on these big networks? I said, because no one has ever traveled this country on land, no flying. I took a boat to Hawaii and a boat to Alaska, all by truck, and just living with people in their barns, in their backyards. People fed me, paint for paint. It was everybody. It was everybody. And people say, why do you love this flag so much? Why? Why is the American flag the best to you, Scott? I've been called a jingoist, a nationalist, a Nazi-like for worshiping this symbol. This flag is the greatest flag in the world. And I'll tell you why. Don't clap yet. Let me explain. Thank you. But the French flag is beautiful. You've heard me say this before. The Italian flag is beautiful. The Japanese flag is beautiful. It represents the Japanese. The Brazilian flag represents the Brazilians. All throughout the whole world. But there's only one flag that represents all of these, everything. It is the humanitarian flag. It is the greatest work of art ever created in this history of civilization. And it is the best flag because of that reason. It represents the melting pot. And I will promote it to the day I die.
God bless you. God bless you. I mean, there's somebody being prosecuted for doing something to a pink flag, destroying it.
Hate crime.
Now, as a hate crime. I don't understand why burning the American flag isn't a hate crime. If burning a pink flag is a hate crime, then burning the American flag demonstrates hatred for what America stands for and for us as a people.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to talk to you and Tom privately. I want everybody to hear this. I'm writing a bill, and I want to push it to the right people, the important people in this country. The whole flag burning thing. BML flag, you burn it, it's a hate crime. The pride flag, you burn it, it's a hate crime.
Yeah.
But the American flag, you burn it, it's not a hate crime, it's your right. Now, hear me out on this one, because you're all going to agree on this. I'm a man of balance. If you heard my speech, I like balance. We go this, but balance is the most important thing. I want to push this bill about you can burn the American flag, but on your own private property, not in public. Hold on. If I took a teddy bear in the middle of the street, 5th Avenue, and I set it on fire, that would be arson, would it not?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't I get arrested for some kind of
Sure, for
arson?
endangering,
Okay.
yeah.
So to do that in public, when you burn an American flag, some of them made of polyester, that stuff dissipate, and that could cause fires and hurt people, and it has. Now, am I saying take away the burning of the flag altogether? No, I'm a man of balance. And if you think it's your right to burn that flag, expressing your grievances and then desecrating the flag that gives you the right to do that blows my mind. But if you're going to do it, you have the right to do it only on your own property. This way we don't have a whole fiasco about we're allowed to burn the flag. Do it on your private property. but in public, never. That is now against the law. That's the bill I want to push, and I want you to help.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, it's a great way to get at it. I mean, we have got. I mean, part of it is the whole idea of burning the flag, taking down statues of Washington and Jefferson, and this isn't like this was very deliberate conduct. It's really part of the Marxist plan to take over a country. You get people to hate their civilization, to hate their culture. That's what the Cultural Revolution in China was about, that Mao brought about. The Chinese communists hate China. They hate Chinese culture. And they try to wipe it out, destroy it, so that the allegiance will not be to China and its great civilization, but to communism. Really, to Xi Jinping or Stalin or Hitler or the Democrat Party, the party of slavery. So how about this? I'll do that with you if you help me do the following. You know how the lefties love to change names, and you can't have Washington School or Jefferson School, slave owners, What institution has the most to do with slavery in the history of America? The Democrat Party. It was the party of slavery. It was the party that opposed Abraham Lincoln. A member of their party killed him. It was the party that, after fighting a war in which we lost more Americans than any other, and you think of the number of white men we lost fighting to free slaves. Don't tell me about white supremacy. I don't know of any other race ever that lost hundreds of thousands of people trying to liberate another race. So, yeah, bad things were done and terrible things were done. But then great things were done too, and they should be recognized. That's an unbelievable sacrifice. You can't find an example of that anywhere in human history. And then after the war, the Democrat Party was the party of Jim Crow. It was the party of the Ku Klux Klan. You know the people that were hung by the Ku Klux Klan second after African Americans? Italians.
Mm-hmm.
I bet you didn't know that. In
Biggest
the South.
Biggest lynching was
Biggest
Sicilians.
lynching was Sicilians.
Biggest American lynching in history was Sicilians in New Orleans.
By the Ku Klux Klan, which was virtually a part of the Democrat Party. One of Joe Biden's best friends was the head of the Democratic Party of the Ku Klux Klan in West Virginia.
I'm leaving.
You're leaving? Okay.
Hold on. Reparations. We went through it. Where's my money? Right? Where's our reparations?
All right. Speaking of reparations, you all know, you know that California has gone through a 1-year study of reparations, and they've recommended $1.2 million to every I think it's to every African American. I think every, whether they were affected, like even if they came to America 5 years ago, I think. But in any event, 1.2 million. It'll bankrupt the state. It'll cost something like $300,000-$400,000 a family. And but there's a little known provision in the bill. The bill, for some reason, exempts black men from having to pay child support. Can you believe that? Because they say that is the after effect of slavery, and therefore they shouldn't have to pay child support. This is a horrible thing to do. To do anything that separates the family, whether it's a black family or a white family or a Hispanic family, to separate a family more than it's separated already is just another way of delivering our country over to atheistic communism. And that's why they're doing it. But watch that bill, because that provision is there, and they're counting on the Nancy Pelosi theory that none of these morons read the bill. But it's in the bill. Now, you have seen Tom Homan, I'm sure, on Fox, on Newsmax. There's nobody that knows more. I don't think there's anyone that knows more about immigration, our immigration system, what's wrong with it, and how to fix it than this man. Tom?
I don't know.
Do you wake up in the morning and say, you have to, after all you've been through and what you saw beforehand, do you wake up in the morning and say, can this really be happening?
I told him earlier, I wake up every morning pissed off.
Well, the same thing, right? So how did it happen? How did we go from a country in which it seemed like in the last couple of years of Trump that we were starting finally to get some control over this? Am I right, or is it just because I love him so much?
No.
And then now it's more out of control than it's been under any president. I don't care, Trump or anybody else. It's more out of control than it's ever been. We don't have a border, which means we don't have a country.
We went from the most secure border in my lifetime. And the data proves it. We're down 83%, a 45-year low. So we went from the most secure border in my career to historic illegal immigration within 3 months. Because Joe Biden and his crew, with Alejandro Mayorkas, who should have been impeached a year ago and needs to be impeached, they wrote 90 executive orders, pretty much abolishing everything we've done under the Trump administration to give us more secure borders. So this isn't mismanagement. This isn't incompetence. This is by design. And the reason they did it is for two reasons. Number one, they think they're future Democratic voters, these millions of people that are moving in. But they don't even have to get there. Because what Biden also did with the 90 executive orders, he also overturned the Trump census rule. So the 5.5 million plus the next 6-7 million he brings in will all be counted in the next census.
You mean the illegals?
Yes.
So if I have a million illegals, that gets counted in?
Under the Biden rule. So when they get counted, what's that result in? More seats in the House for the Democrats. They sold this country out for future political power. That's what they did.
So I don't know if, you know, Jason?
Yeah.
These guys are my heroes. But I did immigration back in the Reagan administration. And I negotiated the agreement with Baby Doc, the dictator of Haiti, to allow us to do what you guys did in Mexico, so that we stopped the Haitian mass migration by doing their asylum analysis right outside of Port-au-Prince. So the Coast Guard brought some cutters up, and instead of their coming across the ocean, in which many of them died, we did it there, and the whole thing was over in 4 months. Ronald Reagan is the one who pushed that through, and I was the one who negotiated the treaty. So when I saw that you did that with Mexico, that's when I was representing him. So all these things, when I was representing him, I was in the White House all the time, and it was the funniest thing representing him because he can do three things at once. So I'm talking to him about how to answer a question from the special prosecutor, and he's on the phone saying, no, I don't think we have enough to do the bombing. Or he's talking about the border. Yeah, tell that little, I won't say the way he said it, tell that little B, he better agree. How much? We'll just raise the damn tariff 100%. So he would do all, and then he said, what was the question? But these guys, that was a beautiful thing you did.
I sit in the office one day, and me and the president just did a press event in New York City on MS-13 operation on Long Island, Operation Matador. We arrested just short of 500 gang members, most of them MS-13. And on the way back after the event, Air Force One, he says, how quick can we get them out? I said, that's a problem. We can detain them, but El Salvador, they give us a hard time taking their citizens back. Trump says, really? How long has this been going on? It's been going on for like 4 different presidencies. He goes, okay, come to the Oval Office tomorrow. Went to the Oval Office tomorrow. He goes, now tell me what exactly the problem is. I said, they won't take them back without travel documents. He goes, How many airplanes can you fill up for El Salvadorians? Like we can probably fill 16, 17 planes up. Stand by. Within 24 hours, he calls me at my desk in DC and he says, get those planes filled. El Salvador will take them tomorrow. So that's the type of president he was.
Love it. Love it.
Now, those folks who don't know, Jason Jones, we just started Border 911. I told you about it earlier. Jason Jones is my partner. There isn't a
What a team, huh?
There isn't a guy on the planet that knows more about the criminal cartels that are now in the United States, not just Mexico. So, Jason, if you can tell the folks real quick your experience with the cartels and what we're trying to do with Border 911 when it comes to cartels.
Absolutely. You know, you don't have to sell the cartels and you don't have to sell border security. If you see it, nobody's okay with it. The problem is that this has really been hidden from the American people. And Tom and I talk about it all the time. You know, what we are really witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, is the largest U.S. intelligence failure since 9/11. I say it on national television every single day, on Newsmax. I say it privately. I say it here. Look, this was well known what was happening. The problem is as these cartels evolved from organized crime into an insurgency, into terrorism, and into a parallel government, you just weren't told. A lot of the eyes were overseas to Middle East terrorism, but the new threat, the new problem is them. And look, when I say that this is the largest U.S. intelligence failure, we have to remember that all of us are being impacted. It's not infrastructure so much. You, the American people, we've lost 100,000 citizens as they've weaponized fentanyl. The adjustment from human smuggling to human trafficking, it's unprecedented. So, Mayor, I can tell you this won't get better until we go after them because they can't stop what they're doing because of the rivals they work with and they're battling for. They can't stop until they are stopped. And that's why we've got to get this out to what's really happening there so we can fix this.
And what you know, and what pisses me off in addition to the millions crossing the border is President Biden hasn't done the damn thing to China for supplying the fentanyl, for supplying the precursors that the cartels are producing it with. He hasn't done a damn thing to Mexico.
Maybe that's one of the deliverables.
Well, look, Trump was a badass president. He'd be on the phone with China tomorrow.
Must have been expecting something for the 31 million. They weren't expecting advice from Hunter, right? This is a pretty good gift. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but this is just as good as having a war with us. Better. They get to kill 100,000 Americans, China does, and they make a fortune on it. In a war, it costs them money to kill us. Here they get to kill us and they make money on it. And they don't have the problem of our really having a good excuse to attack them back big time. Not that Biden would do that, but, you know, a president maybe with a brain and a conscience would. But this is tremendously beneficial to China. It's like what they did with COVID. You're never going to convince me that they didn't deliberately, whether they deliberately produced that for this purpose, or it got out of the lab and they started to have a tremendous problem in China. When they realized their problem, they closed China down. And for 2.5 months, they sent Chinese all around the world as agents of death. And that's what Trump stopped early, for which he was accused of being a xenophobe by Biden and all of the Democrats. Had he not done that, we'd have lost maybe another 400,000 or 500,000 people. But those people killed millions of people all over the world. Biden's never asked a question about it. He's never even tried to find out if they did it so we can prevent them doing it in the future. So how much less enforcement do we have at the border now than, let's say, in 2019?
Oh, you can't even compare it.
What would be the difference? So now people are approaching the border. In 2019, was there a chance we would grab them and get them? And now, is there anybody that stops them?
Well, there's so many layers that have been broken down. You know, we had great relationships with SAMAR, which is the force in Mexico that our government worked very closely with. I sent a lot of intelligence to them to rescue people whom they were about to kill in mass murders. We went after all the capos and the bosses and really did great work under the Calderon and the Nieto administration, and then under the Trump administration. But now all those relationships, Americans need to know, your DEA in Mexico and your intelligence agencies have been neutered. The operations, if you think there's some kind of clandestine operation going on in Mexico against the cartel bosses, have you noticed none of them have been taken down? This is why. So the cartels have won at every front, billions of dollars. And so what that means at the border, Mayor, is that these Border Patrol agents are overrun with bodies, and that opens up all the gates around because they have to surge with resources. And then from there, the cartels move whatever commodity that they want to move in and out of the country at will. That's the way it's really working right now.
And what's happening right now, just so you're clear, so don't believe the bullshit you're hearing. Can I say that in your podcast? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm very
If I
offended.
offend anybody tonight, I don't care.
I'm very offended.
Because, again, I'm pissed off.
We're going to have to cancel them.
What do, you can't cancel somebody if they don't care. So what they're saying, so the media is saying that Mayorkas has got the border under control, illegal immigration now 70%. That's a lie. What they're doing is playing a shell game. Let's be clear. Right now, they have identified 11 ports of entry, including the Miami airport. 11 ports of entry. They have a quota every day to move 600 parolees through each POE. Do the math. That's over 6,000. Border Patrol is still arresting 3,500 to 4,000 a day sneaking in. That's 10,000. So still, there are still, to this day, 10,000 illegal aliens entering this country every day. This administration just took a big part of them and put them through the port of entry saying this is a legal pathway. It's not a legal pathway. They're going to lose this in court. I'm not an attorney, but I can read. And the parole statute is clear. It must be by case-by-case analysis based on, a significant public benefit, and they must look at specifics to each case. So when Secretary Mayorkas in the White House says we're bringing 30,000 a month in from these countries, there's no case-by-case analysis. They will lose this. But now they want to tell the American people we fixed the borders down 70%. It is not down 70%. 10,000 a day are still coming in. Even if they did say only 3,500 is coming in, that's about 4 times as many that came in during the Trump administration. The difference is under the Trump administration on the releases, he ended catch and release. They're paroling, I just told you, 6,000 a day.
Tell them what catch and release is.
Catch and release, you catch them, you process and release them in the United States. That's what this president is doing. However, under Trump administration, we ended catch and release. They're paroling 6,000 people a day in. I was ICE director for a year and a half. You know how many people are paroled in? 3. 2 testified in a drug trial. We needed a testimony to lock these people up. And 1 was a heart transplant for a baby. We sent them back home after the surgery. 3 in a year and a half. They're doing 6,000 a day. It's abuse of the parole policy. The border isn't fixed. The border's out of control. Jason was just down there last week, and they're coming across in droves. So don't let the media lie to you, because the border is not under control.
So I'm not, when I envision this, I envision they just come over and we don't do anything to stop them.
And we help them. We help
Yeah,
them
and we
across,
help them.
literally. That's exactly what's happening.
And the reason we help them,
You can't make it up. You'll literally see Border Patrol agents helping these folks, and then they begin the processing right there. But, that's one part of the story, though, Mayor. It's the national security failures, because from that is where and this is another part that's not talked a lot about, and that is the amount of drones that are crossing. And you've got 9 different stations along the southwest border, folks. In just one last year, they had over 26,000 detections of drones and over 10,000 incursions coming from the Mike side into the United States. Now, why is that important? Because this is how they bring in fentanyl, methamphetamine, and other things, because that's how they determine how open your border is. So, this term you hear all the time about operational control, problem is no one ever tells you how they have operational control. The way it works is the Halcon network, the Falcons, the Lookouts are check on and off, just like law enforcement, 24/7, 365. In the worst weather is when they move the most product, because they know cops aren't out in
when
the
you
bad
say
weather.
product,
Anything, it's
that's
a
really
child.
a technical term for you.
It
What
is.
that?
It's a child. It's a person. It is a high value, someone who's a known terrorist, who they're only going to charge more money. It's fentanyl. It's methamphetamine. To them, they don't care what it is, because they're making money on the tax and what's moving through. So it's very organized. The problem is that we haven't shown that to the American people. I was just down there last week, and while we were watching a group of 120, a drone came from the Mexico side, and we literally got it on as I was interviewing Lieutenant Chris Olivetis with the Department of Public Safety. We literally had the drone in the background, and we were showing it on national television. I mean, this is how open your border has become.
I mean, and the consequences of that are fentanyl gets in, child trafficking, human trafficking, terrorists.
Anything
How many, estimate how many terrorists get in that way?
Well, we know that according to CBP's data, since fiscal year 23 of October of this year, 125 between the ports of entry. Now, why is that important for you? Because that means they're working with the alien smuggling organizations, the long-haul smugglers to get here, and the cartels to be pushed into the country under their umbrella of protection. Those are the ones that we're the most concerned about. Those are the ones that we have the most
But
issues.
since Biden's been president, it's 227 last count. And look, what me and Jason were talking about tonight, I just got a cue card showing me down there. What me and Jason were talking about, you're going to see on Border 911. So all your listeners, go to border911.com. This is something we just started. The website's being built, but you can go to Border 911 and sign up for notices. I brought the most talented border security team, Mayor.
Great idea.
Is Tom Homan, is Jason Jones, is Sarah Carter, is Derek Maltz from the DEA, is Tim Ballard.
I work with Derek a lot.
Yes.
Great guy.
We got to give him a sleeping pill once in a while to calm him down, but he's okay. Then we got the great Tim Ballard, who just released the Songs of Freedom. We got Mark Morgan, CBP Commissioner. So I told you earlier, I've done this for 35 years. I brought together the greatest border security team ever. So we're going to start Border 911. So what we're talking about you here today, we're going to talk about across the country. We're going to talk about the truth on the border, how it affects everybody. So hopefully in 25, they'll go to the voting booth and vote for the guy who's going to secure our border and finish the job he started.
Yeah. So Dr. Maria is my partner on Uncovering the Truth every Sunday, 10 to 11 on WABC radio. And from day one, she ran a hospital for a number of years in New Hampshire, which, believe it or not, had a massive drug problem. Prescription drug and then fentanyl. And her concern about fentanyl and now about Trank is, I mean, you've been following this and watching it grow, and now it's become just a complete epidemic domestically.
So for the last 2 years, I've been doing media hits in talking about putting a moratorium on the border. First, it was the fentanyl poisoning. And as you already talked about, the precursor is from China, working with the cartels. Biden administration has made them billionaires. But it's the sex trafficking of kids that have really just, it's so sick and devastating. And now the United States is the #3 country for sex trafficking. And is there such a thing? Oh, by the way, Jason and Tom, thank you very much for Border 911. Thank you. Can we legally put a moratorium on the border saying, okay, until we figure out what's happening here, where everybody is in our country, is there a legal way to just shut it down until we get a better process, till we figure out who's in our country?
Okay.
Do you know, just the other day, they said that somebody on the terror watch list was accidentally let in the country.
First of all, the answer to your question is we did it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do it again. But it secure the border at the highest level ever. But that wasn't an accident. You know, I've talked to a couple of whistleblowers from the Border Patrol this past year. The Border Patrol's been in such, the instructions from headquarters is process as quick as possible, release as quick as possible. Because if there's no overcrowding, there's nothing to see here, no crisis. That's what Mayorkas wants, no overcrowding. So they've been processing and releasing quicker, even before the vetting from the Bureau comes back. So I've talked to the 2 whistleblowers who called me, says, we release people because we're told to release them quick. The vetting didn't come back, and on at least 2 different occasions, the vetting came back and they were hot. But guess what? They were released. Where are they at now?
Which
we
means
don't
they're
know.
gone.
Yes. I
Effectively
talked to one
gone.
border patrol agent told me this. He says, I was processing a guy, did a record check. He was convicted of murder, served the sentence for murder. And because he had COVID, he was told, well, we don't want him in the facility getting other people sick, release him.
Oh.
And they were going in and convicted of murder was released. This administration, they got a lot to answer for, and they will answer for it under a Trump administration. I guarantee it. They need to be.
What is the deal with Alejandro Mayorkas, though? I had the opportunity to talk with him at a 9/11 event. There was something wrong with that guy. I don't make fun of people, but like that guy, there's something evil to the core about him. He just would lie to my face, and he had this weird smile on his face. We have the border under control. Like he was a robot.
The most
It was
evil,
odd.
the most evil thing about this administration, while we're sitting here having a good time right now, talking about the mess this government made, there's a child being raped tonight while we're talking.
Oh.
There's females being raped while we're talking. And I got my buddy down there, and then will tell you, we've both seen it, we've both heard it. Every night, 31% of every woman that makes that crossing with the use of cartels gets sexually assaulted. I told you earlier, I've talked to girls as young as 9 years old that have been raped multiple times, which is just sickening. And stuff like that changed me forever. I'll tell you, we're down to Brooks County a few months ago with Sheriff Benny Martinez. I was with Benny for 4 hours. In 4 hours, we found 2 dead bodies. We met with a doctor down there, a rancher who's also a doctor. And this is just one example. And I hope this pisses you off or makes you sad, because then you're going to start raising hell too. He told me about a family of 3. Jason, you know the story. Family of 3 from an African nation, mother, father, and a child. Child was 20 months old, 20-month-old little girl. They started crossing the river, and of course the border patrol's approaching them. So the smugglers, so they wouldn't get arrested, what do? They throw the baby in the river. And the men and women of the border patrol, who's wearing 60 pounds of gear, will jump in that river to save that child. They've saved over 18,000 lives since Joe Biden's been in the White House. Well, and the mother and father were thrown in. None of them could swim. So the brave men and women of the Border Patrol, who's the finest 1% this country ever has, I wore that uniform. It's a tough job. So they thought they saved all 3. The little girl, the 20-month-old girl, died later at the hospital. During her postmortem, that little girl was sodomized in every little opening of her body by a member of the criminal cartel who demanded that as payment for crossing. This shit's happening every day. This isn't a joke. This isn't politics. This is life or death. And the reason I'm so emotional when I'm on TV, the reason I'm so emotional I text in front of Congress, is because people are friggin' dying. They're being tortured. They're being raped. And this administration opened the border up and allowing it to happen. When you open the border up and there's no consequence, the most vulnerable people in the world will put themselves in hands of criminal cartels to be smuggled to the greatest nation on earth. Under President Trump, when illegal immigration down 45-year low, 83% decline, how many little girls weren't being raped? How many women weren't being raped? How many people didn't die of fentanyl overdoses? How many women and children weren't sex trafficked? How many known suspected terrorists didn't make in this country? President Trump saved lives. This administration is not humane. More Americans have died than any time in history. More migrants have died than any time in history. More known suspected terrorists have entered this country other than any time in history. This administration is lawless. It's almost treasonous what they're doing to this country. We got to take it back. We got to take it back.
There's a movie that came out on July 4th, Sound of Freedom. And Sound of Freedom is about the gentleman that he mentioned, Tim Ballard. It's a somewhat fictionalized, but pretty accurate, I think, movie about it. And with an unbelievable performance by Jim Caviezel, who played Jesus in The Passion of the Christ. Now, I don't know if you remember, but he played that part speaking Aramaic, which is an ancient language that he had to learn. And it was probably one of the greatest acting performances ever, which of course got no recognition. This is even by the miserable, horrible critics. They say it's a brilliant acting performance. But before the movie is even out, Rolling Stone, and it's being attacked. The movie's being attacked as part of the QAnon conspiracy to try to convince us that we have an epidemic of sex trafficking, that we have an epidemic of pedophilia, that it really isn't true, and that it's a right-wing conspiracy. And this is what this article is all about, that this is a, they say the movie's a joke, and insincere Ballard, who you're talking about, has dabbled in Q-adjacent conspiracy theories.
You know, that's bullshit.
I know it's bullshit, but what I'm trying...
You know, Mayor, he was a special agent for me. He worked at ICE. He left months before he was eligible for retirement.
Yeah, tell them what he did.
He left retirement on the table, a federal retirement. He left early because his heart was into this work. He wanted to save kids. That guy is a patriot. That guy deserves all the credit in the world.
So the other person that you'll recognize in this movie is Mira Sorvino, the daughter of the actor Paul Sorvino. She's really a great actress, and I'm very, very proud that she's doing this, because she's probably ruined her career in Hollywood by doing this. But there is a vicious, unbelievable Hollywood effort to destroy this movie. And all it does is actually increase the conspiracy theory, because part of the conspiracy is that pedophilia and these sexual perversions have really infected Hollywood. And they're acting. Here, this ridiculous review of this movie gives you the feeling that they got something to hide. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the legislature of California last year reduced the penalties for pedophilia, signed by that ridiculous governor that they have. Who the hell would reduce penalties for pedophilia?
They're trying to get the
What the hell
public
is wrong
used
with
to
you?
these perversions.
Why would
Little
you
by
do that?
little, they're pressing the envelope, and it's defining deviancy down. So you accept a little bit more through time. They push it a little bit more. And these are all steps in a Marxist communist plan to destroy this country from within. And who's standing in the way? All of us. You come to talks like this. He's doing a show, but you know what he's about. He's about fighting crime. He's about letting people know what's being covered up by the mainstream media. You care. You care about this country. And it's going to be us all who have to take it back.
Yeah, decent people with
Decent
decent values.
people.
These aren't even like, these are things that, this isn't like we're arguing over whether somebody should have a little more freedom to do this or a little more freedom to do that. We're talking about basic, major human perversions. Taking sexual advantage of a child? I mean, I never thought we'd see the day we would debate whether that's, and there are people who believe that we should allow that freedom.
What did they try to redefine
What
it as?
freedom?
Minor attractive persons. They tried to get the medical society to accept we have this book called the DSM, it's 5 now, and it's got psychiatric diagnoses in it. I see some nurses are shaking their head. And so pedophilia is something we can't correct. There's no cure for it. It's in the DSM-5. They tried to redefine that it's no longer pedophilia, mental illness that you can't cure, so these people need to be locked up. They wanted to redefine it as MAP, minor attracted persons.
You know, we got to be strong. We can't, as you said earlier, Mayor, we can't let them scare us to be silent. We got to be loud.
Yeah.
You know, my wife asks me all the time, does it bother you that big part of this country hates your guts? No, it don't bother me a bit, because I know what I know. They won't shut me up. Don't let them shut you up, because that's the way they win. You said it, Mayor. They try to cancel you. If you don't give a shit, they can't cancel you. I'm like, you serious? You got to fight. I've had protesters at my house. I've had my wife and kids, death threats against them. I got pictures of my son walking to school. You know, but you know, God loving wife and kids. They stand with me, and you can't let them. That's what they want. They'll call you names, Mayor. They'll call me names. They'll call anybody who wants to fight this racist. Let it lay on deaf ears, because you know what? We're not racist. We're trying to save this nation. They're not going to quiet us down. They're not going to shut us up. They're not going to do it.
You know, so how much permanent damage? You know, what I worry about is we have over a year to go before we can really start changing this. I'm going to assume that this country is smart enough to make a major change and give us, you know, the right president. And I believe it should be Donald Trump, but it certainly shouldn't be Biden or. Personally, I don't think he makes it, by the way. The doctor here doesn't necessarily agree with me, and she's a much better expert on it. But I've known this guy for 35 years. I met him when I was in the Reagan administration. And it was my job to get U.S. attorneys and U.S. marshals appointed. And it was his job to be the ranking Democrat on the committee. And my chief of staff was his law school roommate. And his name was Jeff Harris. And he said to me, I want you to meet this guy, Joe Biden, because he can be very useful to us. He's a really, really good guy. I went to law school with him, but boy, he's stupid as hell. And you're going to really get, because I get a little impatient sometimes. He said, you're going to have to control your, your impatience with him. But he's kind of funny and a decent guy. But he was the dumbest guy in our class. Oh, and by the way, he was a big cheat. He was like the guy you didn't want to sit next to because he was leaning, he would like put his head on your shoulder to read your paper. Probably smelling your hair, you know. Maybe, I don't know. I know he does little girls. He smells their hair. I think he probably does everybody. But so I met him and I knew him for years. I negotiated the 1994 crime bill with him, which I essentially helped to author in the Reagan administration. And he since disavowed it. He disavowed that bill. He really didn't know what was in it. Vague idea what was in it. And then I'm the one who discovered his criminality. And I was shocked. I thought of him as stupid, kind of a puppet of the Democrat Party. He doesn't know what to say, so they tell him what to say, and he repeats it. They tell him to attack Bork, so he attacks Bork. They tell him to stop attacking Thomas because, did you notice Thomas is black? Oh yeah, I guess so. I really didn't notice that. And the guy's beating the shit out of you? No, I didn't realize that. Remember when Thomas did the thing about the lynching? It scared the hell out of him because it switched the whole thing around. But I mean, he was a basic idiot. The best description of him comes from his colleague in the Obama cabinet, Secretary Gates, Secretary of Defense, who said, throughout his entire career, he's never made a correct decision about foreign policy. Now, people thought he was kidding. When he ran for president, and Gates was no fan of Trump, they asked him again. That was kind of like a joke and an exaggeration. He said, no, it wasn't. It's absolutely true. He's incapable of making the right decision. And they said, why? And he said, well, you figure it out. Meaning he's a dummy. But I never knew he was a massive crook. He's a dummy and a massive crook. And when it's that evil at the top, we're in real trouble. So we've got to stay together. We have got to stay together, and we've got to get independents and Democrats to see that they need their. This is for our country. This isn't about these little girls that are killed. It's not Democrats. They're human beings.
Oh, they claim to be the party. the humane party, that Trump was inhumane. Jason was just down there. Can you tell real quick the story you just told me? You were down there last week about the folks that had died that you were down there with.
Yeah, I interviewed in a small community in Texas. Terrell County, Texas, ladies and gentlemen, has about 700 people in the county. Last year, they had 7,000 apprehensions and 8,000 known gotaways. And the sheriff told me he suspects he's a 26-year patrol agent in charge. And I'm doing a 60-minute style sit-down interview with him. And I start to talk to him about how brutal the smugglers are on these people. And he starts to tell me the story where a mom, her 9-year-old son, and her 15-year-old son last year crossed with a group and these smugglers. The 15-year-old was a big boy. He started getting heat exhaustion. And so they bound him because he was getting loud and he was lagging behind. So they bound his hands and they were telling her, look, you got to keep him up or we're going to take care of him. It finally got to the point 10 miles in the United States where they told her either you're going to kill him or we are going to kill him. So she hit him in the back of the head with a large rock. The boy went down and all of them set on him, including making the 9-year-old brother sit on his legs until he suffocated. I got that out nationwide on Newsmax last week. So when I tell you that we are up against an evil that most Americans have not been told, these are animals. And now they are a part of every part of our communities across this country, as now they're involved in not just the smuggling of people, but the true trafficking through debt bondage that you heard me talk about earlier. This is what we're up against. Never mind the sicarios who have been trained in basic, intermediate, and advanced training in that country. I'm going to say it to you right now. We're going to have to get real tough as Americans. I have been tracking these cartels and building programs to go after them. And I'm going to tell you, if you thought ISIS and Al-Qaeda was bad, remember, at least they were doing this believing that they're going to, ascend to a higher God. These people are doing it for pure evil purposes. Mm-hmm. This is a new ball game for this country, and Americans have to know what's coming.
Yeah, I don't think, I really do think when we say Mexican cartels, they have this impression of, there was the mafia and the Colombian cartels and the Russian mafia, sophisticated, and the Mexican cartels were sort of like second level, third level group of local criminals. They're nothing like that now. They're as sophisticated, maybe more sophisticated than the Colombian cartels that I dealt with. They have done an unbelievably brilliant job of infiltrating our country. You can look at a map and you can find representatives of the cartels in virtually every major city and a lot of small cities, because they have learned they want their own people there because they can make a lot more that way and they can be more secure. It took the mafia 20 years to figure that out. And this is a very dangerous group of people, incredibly dangerous. And they work hand in hand with China, which gives China an ally right on our border. And they work hand in hand with, really as opportunists, with the Islamic terrorist groups, right? They've been doing that for a long time.
They absolutely do. And if you look back to like 2009, as they were evolving, Mayor, they were working in contracting with U.S.-based gangs across the country to move their product. Today, you're absolutely right in what you're saying. They have moved their own operations, their own operators now. And this is the thing. Every gang in this country now buys their product from Mexico because they can make it so much cheaper and get it so much cheaper. So they have dominated our country. And yet, what are we doing to stop them right now? Nothing.
We're helping them.
It's incredible.
We're basically helping them. We're leaving the border open. They're essentially our border patrol. They are like the gatekeepers. To the extent that we have gatekeepers, they probably know much more than we do about who's coming into our country.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, you're not coming through their territory without paying the piso or the tax. You're not moving any product. And if you do, the results are very clear. They'll kill you. You won't offend again.
So when Adams puts 50 of these people in a hotel or 200 in a hotel, he doesn't know who the hell he has.
That's right.
I mean, he could have people that came out of an insane asylum. He could have sexual perverts. He could have ordinary people. He could have murderers. He has no idea what he's got. He's probably got all of them.
If Adams wants to solve the problem in New York City, he'll stop being a sanctuary city and let ICE arrest and remove him. That's what he needs to be doing.
Of course.
I just got back. Another thing, another twist on the cartels. I just got back from Israel. I was in Israel for 10 days. Just got back last week. And I've met with the border security unit down there. And they have intelligence reports, and I haven't talked to you about this, Jessica, it just came to mind. They have intelligence reports that Hezbollah is out in Mexico teaching the criminal cartels how to build tunnels. Because they build the most sophisticated tunnels trying to get in Israel, and now they're on our southern border. Jason, have you heard that?
I've not heard that, but I
They
can
just
see
shared
them.
that with me last week.
I could see them uniting with Sinaloans to do that because Sinaloa cartel is building some of the best tunnels here. So it's a perfect look. And this is what's happened. You've had 161 countries in just the last 7 months cross into the U.S. Those relationships back to those countries, they've been forged at a level now that we never saw previously. That's a great example.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and conclude. We'll have each one of them kind of sum up and kind of give you their wisdom so you can take it away with you, because I want you to share this with your friends and your neighbors, and we need a big movement.
Amen.
I mean, these two men are doing an unbelievable job. Faith and family, freedom and finance are four things that we would do anything to protect. I trust the team at Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors, with providing the advice and sound strategies to take advantage of the inflationary pressures, the high interest rates, and the international challenges we face today. The Kirk Elliott team, with over 29 years of experience, shares our values and believes in people over profit. They can help you protect your finances from the big government policies that are out of our control. So what's in our control? The decision to act or not to act is within our control. I encourage you to act. Call Kirk Elliott, PhD, Private Advisors today. Start working with a team that will help you protect your retirement assets with gold and silver while sharing your desire to protect your faith, family, and freedom. Call them today, 720-605-3900. That's 720-605-3900, and tell them Rudy sent you. Or simply fill out a request for a free consultation at kirkelliottphd.com/Rudy. Okay, we're back. So why don't we go? You wanted to know what can we do? Meaning, what can we do? So who would like to? Tom, you want to?
Well, I'll start by this. We need to make sure everybody gets to the voting booth. First of all, voting booth. Second thing, you need to talk to every one of your friends, get them to vote. And and call of action. I don't care if your representative's Republican. Don't let them tell you that Republicans own the Senate, they can't get anything done. That's a bunch of crap. Because we own the House, we control the purse strings. They don't have to sit down and negotiate an infrastructure bill. They don't have to negotiate a funding bill. They can say, screw you. We're going to boycott every meeting with you. We're not negotiate any legislation until you show us one thing you're going to do to slow the flow. What are you going to do to secure the border? Until then, we're not going to any meetings with you. And we control the purse strings. If Mayorkas is going to let the border patrol do their job, then don't fund them. Don't fund the massive releases they're doing. There's certain things Congress can do, and the Republicans need to grow a set and take the Democrats out.
You're going to show them, Tommy. I know you're going to. Mr. Mayor, we have an entrepreneur over here from Long Island, a realtor, and a real patriot.
Hi, greatest mayor ever. Thank you for all your amazing years of service. This is a little sidebar from what we're talking about, but I have been, unfortunately, down this rabbit hole with the trafficking for years. I've seen a crazy amount of videos, and I've been following this for a long time. I did see the movie the other day, brought me to tears. Everybody in the movie theater was in tears. But my question is for you, Mr. Giuliani. This nonsense about them trying to disbar you, what do you think the chances are of their success?
What do I think they'll be successful?
Yes.
Probably.
You think so?
Well, they own it. It's like arguing a case in a Soviet court. They own the court. Our bar associations in liberal cities have been massive left-wing organizations for 30 years. They oppose conservative judges. They've condemned President Trump 30 or 40 times. Now, we're talking about the DC bar. We're talking about the people who make their money and make their wealth in the swamp. Where do you think those lawyers make their money? They make their money in... The reason that Trump is so frightening to them is because he is the only one that has shown ever that he'll stand up to them. But when Tom says we have to grow a pair, what he's really talking about is standing up to them. Many Republicans are afraid to do that. They don't want the nasty editorial in the Washington Post. They want to be able to go to the cocktail party. That's the only reason they ran in the first place, so they can be important, or they can make money, or they can leave after, like Ryan did after 10 years and make a lot of money. I mean, Ryan completely sold us out when he was the speaker.
Paul Rhino, that's his name, Paul Rhino. We don't like them, Mayor, that's for damn sure.
We could have done all of this in Trump's first 2 years if Ryan were just
Not a rhino.
Well,
He was part of
whatever
the
he is, a
system.
traitor. I mean, the guy wouldn't send out subpoenas. He wouldn't support legislation. We had, I mean, people like Jordan and the people who were watching were in the House then. And he blocked all of it. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to have to elect Republicans who can stand up and fight for what we believe in and not want to be part of this. And as far as me, why are they doing it to me? They're doing it to me because they don't want anyone to represent Donald Trump or anybody else. The gentleman that was arrested with him, his aide, it took him 5 weeks to find a lawyer. There's an article in the paper today about it because nobody would represent him. This is the number 2 guy. No lawyer would represent him because they'd throw you out of the law firm. The case that they're using to try to disbar me on is a case that I went and argued in Pennsylvania. And I took it over 2 days before I had to argue it because the lawyer doing it was threatened. He was threatened with being thrown out of his law firm. He was threatened with a lot more things, and he was too afraid to go to court. So I had to go to court and learn the case overnight. The judge there, if you do something wrong, a judge sanctions you. The judge ruled against us, but he didn't sanction me. And I'm being sanctioned because a political guy wrote a letter to the DC bar complaining about me.
Total miscarriage of
It's
justice
complete
and
garbage.
abuse, an
I've
abuse
practiced
of
law
power.
for 50 years. Never had a complaint. Never had an ethical issue.
This guy took
I've
down the
argued
mafia.
some of them. I've argued in the Supreme Court. Prosecuted the mafia. I sent 2 Nazis off to their death. I prosecuted Wall Street. I prosecuted just about everybody in the Koch administration, was how I became mayor. And I also represented AT&T. I've represented some of the major corporations in the country. I represented the Wall Street Journal. And I've
Greatest
never,
mayor in American history.
and they went and without telling me, they took my iCloud account. The FBI did. And do you know the day they took it? The day I began representing Donald Trump. And you know when they gave it back to me? The day after I stopped representing. For 2.5 years, they knew everything on my iCloud
They
account.
spied on you illegally.
They took everything in my apartment. They raided my law office, which is unthinkable. To raid a lawyer's office, I have other clients, not just Donald Trump. The FBI that I knew would never do this. In 2015, I was the G-Man of the Year. And I got the award for my lifetime of work with the FBI. And then they come into my apartment and raid my law office. And then 2 years later, send me a letter that they told the grand jury I didn't commit any crimes. They didn't have probable cause to present a case to the grand jury. Then how do they have a probable cause to raid me? What
We are
happened?
sorry,
Did it
Rudy. We are
disappear?
so sorry. The American people.
Don't
just
be sorry.
please.
Fight back.
We're gonna.
I don't give
right?
a shit. I mean,
We're here right now. We care.
I don't. I'm very proud of what I've done.
We are proud of you.
I'm very,
Rudy.
very proud of it
You
because
are-
I can look in the mirror and I can say, unlike many of these lawyers who I've had to go in and take over for, hold them while they were crying. I'm not crying. I'm fighting back.
We love you. We love you, Mayor. We're gonna fight with you. I'm telling you, right here. This is your house, by the way. We hope you want to come back once in a while. We're
I
building
never
up.
liked them anyway.
We're building up an army. We, the people, are not going to take this anymore. This can be the voice in the wilderness for you, Mr. Mayor. This house is your house. You come in here, we'll share everything. You people love the mayor, and I know you do. All right, this is a great opportunity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor Giuliani, the greatest mayor, a real hero, a patriot beyond belief. Look at him up there. That's him.
Thank
That's
you.
our mayor.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You
Thank
want to see him, you want to love him, they're going to give you a chance to take a picture with him. Orderly and quickly. Tom Holman, my hero right here. Jason Jones, Dr. Maria. They'll walk around the floor. You can take a picture with them. You can talk to them. If you want, Rudy, we're going to get online
Yeah, I'll
nicely
do it.
and peacefully. Okay.
You want me to
We're
stay
going
here
to
and
march
take pictures?
peacefully on the Capitol. We're going to come
Sorry,
up here
bro. No, no.
peacefully for you, Rudy.
Okay.
Tommy.
Our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776. One of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to talk, we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense.